So there's been a lot of discussion about Jada Pinkett Smith and Will Smith lately with the latest celebrity gossip. And you may be wondering, well, what can you add to the discussion that hasn't already been said? And what really has happened? I feel like it's been going on for 7 years. Well, there have been new developments, it's been the talk of the town, and I really think that I can add some added value through all the nuances and trauma and experiences that Will has written about in his book, which, I think most people have failed to bother to read, and it really adds a lot of context to the situation. I try to not judge a book by its cover, and unfortunately, I think a lot of people will do that. They won't read, they'll take very little information, and then they will just jump to conclusions about people. And this goes beyond celebrities. That cliche is just not true. People judge a book by its cover all the time in real life. I mean, I'm sure you've seen some social experiments or seen interactions in your own life where, of very little information, people will be rude or mean or disrespectful or make conclusions about people um, when turns out that wasn't true. Maybe that person, just because he has tattoos, is not a bad person, whatever the example it is. So let's get started. Now, I'll start with the recap on the latest events with the ongoing, multi-year saga for Will and Jada. And I'll be quick since so many others have already summarized it, and I've kind of been late to this discussion online. So, starting off, I do want to say that, yeah, I feel sad for Will, and I really think that he should set boundaries and do the right thing, even if it's not, what he pictures in his mind. Um, so, what exactly did happen to get to this sentiment? So, lately, Jada released a new book. It's her own memoir, and in a interview to market the book, she revealed that in her mind, she had been separated from Will for the last 7 years. She just felt like she uh, couldn't disclose this information publicly in the right way. Now, this caused all sorts of controversy because of many follow-up statements and events. But just to summarize concisely for the short attention span YouTube retention audience, uh, essentially, uh, people were skeptical of that. They said, well, why would Will tank his career, slap Chris Rock, lose all his endorsements and uh, you know business opportunities by slapping Chris Rock if he didn't feel like Jada and him were still together? So people called into question that they felt like Will still believed that they were together. And when you look at a lot of these comments on social media, they say, "Oh, look at the hurt in Will's eyes," um, and this is referencing new videos. And looking back in time, they've always had these comments because just a quick recap on previous events. Um Jada has done other things too, such as reveal on her public talk show to Will that she had gone through an entanglement, which is her way of positively or distancing herself from saying that she had cheated on Will multiple times with um, someone else who was basically just someone that Will knew as well, his son's friend. Now, through all of that, the web as a whole, but especially social media, has kind of turned against Jada, and she's become somewhat of the world's most hated woman on the internet. Now, is that true in real life? I mean, she's still posting every day uh, clips from her book tour, and it seems like there's still an audience that respect her and are selling out and attending her book tour, and they seem to be respectful. But the internet's turned against her, and you can tell because anytime she doesn't disable comments on her Instagram, man, do the floodgates come out. They call her the most manipulative vindictive women in the world. SNL did a sketch about how crazy and ridiculous she was. So it's really the talk of the town recently. And, people are saying this is what happens when you fail to marry the right woman, and how choosing the wrong women to marry can be one of the most destructive uh, situations in your life. So that was the quick recap, and I hope that someone's still watching, because man, it's hard to keep retention rate on YouTube. But now I can finally get into my uh, discussion on what I can add to the story with reading Will's book. Now I think there's a lot of nuances in the memoir that I don't think people really respect or account for because they haven't read it. They just, read a little bit of stuff on the internet and then jump to conclusions. Now, what I found having read it is one, Will is very so much, ever since he was a kid, a, a person who pictured himself as married with family and kids. He never wanted to sleep around. He never wanted to, play around or hook up. There's something instilled in him from an early age that he just pictured a perfect marriage as that thing. So, contrary to like other figures, I mean, I read Kevin Hart's book as well, who, were happy to have fun for a period. Will was always looking for serious relationships, and there's a lot of trauma associated with that too. Um, he was cheated on when he was young, as a teenager, and this was when he was doing decently well already as a rapper touring the country, and so there's a lot of trauma regarding that. Um, and it was actually what spurred him to become the greatest entertainer in the world. Was he felt that if he had all that, it can compensate, and no woman would ever cheat on him again. And as you can tell, that's not exactly all that matters to prevent that. You can be the richest person in the world, you could be the most famous, which is the case with Will. I mean, he's probably the A-list celebrity beside Leo, and it's clear to me that like other things matter more. Having positive interactions in a relationship, trust, enough time, the same values, lack of criticism, lack of contempt, last, all these things that I've read from other books about healthy relationships that matter more in terms of having a healthy relationship than just, hey, this is the biggest, baddest, most famous, richest guy in the world. I mean, if you're never there or you're still fighting all the time, that's another thing. Now, do I demonize Jada? No, I don't think she's a demon. Uh, and, I think they probably were separated to an extent. I don't think it was this big reveal on the talk show. It did seem like Will knew before, but he was still hurt about it. I believe that Will still really wanted the marriage to go through, but Jada had officiated and created a official separation, um, or a break, where they're off for a certain period. And despite that, temporary open relationship period or whatnot, he was still very much hurt, and he's still been constantly trying to mend that relationship. And some other points from the book include the fact that his father was abusive and beat his mother constantly, and he always hated himself for being too much of a coward to protect his mother. So the identity and the you know concept of being a coward is something that has haunted him until adulthood. Those some of those things, like him jumping out of a helicopter over the Grand Canyon. It's his way of tackling his fear and overcoming it. And he's done such a good job with such strong willpower to become the greatest entertainer of our generation, or one of the greatest, and conquer his fear, and kind of in a way achieve so much and overcompensated. But it's a story in the fact that, all those material successes, you don't necessarily need to go to that extreme and jump out of a helicopter over the Grand Canyon to, master your fears. And not necessarily violence or, standing up and, with violence to protect someone is always the best solution. Now, as a kid, he was helpless. And now, as an adult, he felt probably, well, he went on Oprah and he said it was, or was it Oprah? It was Trevor Noah, and he said, it's a mixture of multiple things. One was, seeing his mom get beaten every day and not doing anything about it. So in that moment, he felt he was, you know, if I had to guess, he was probably feeling like he was stepping up back when he never stepped up and was always a coward. And so he felt like he was doing the right thing by going to Chris Rock and punching him because he was always too scared to do that to his dad growing up. And now he was defending his wife for once in his life. Now, with all that said, where does that stand and how is it different from the, vile, you know, general public who is really just bashing Jada? Um, well, first off, I think it's the general public is pretty flippant with their conclusions. As I mentioned, I preach not judging a book by its cover, having some empathy, respect, and dignity before jumping to conclusions. And unfortunately, I don't know if the world does that. I posted a video shortly after the Chris Rock slap because I just finished his memoir. And, I was showing more kindness and empathy to Will than the general public did. And, many of the comments in my video back then, a couple years ago when I, made that response to the Will Smith slap was, you know, oh, you're completely wrong. Will should have no respect. You're a terrible person too. And Will should be banned from all Hollywood activities for the rest of his life. He's a terrible person that's so unprofessional. They were acting like he had killed a baby on stage or murdered someone. Sure, I don't think his actions were correct. I don't think violence was right. However, they were turning on him like he had committed some heinous atrocity. And I felt that was a bit overreactive, and the crowd turned against me. And lo and behold, now it's flipped kind of 180, and the crowd has turned against Jada. And a lot of people are just kind of saying, oh man, Will, you got to break up with her. You got to set boundaries. You got to respect yourself. And you're hurting so much. Why do you continue this? And it's just, you can't really trust the crowd. I mean, it sucks when I got those comments, but the masses are just, they're not really thinking too hard. They're just jumping to conclusions. So having read his book, I feel like there's a lot to cover. I'm sure a lot of people like Oprah who have also, they're of higher consciousness and have read Will's memoir probably reached out to him to help. But Will's doing the most. Shortly after, um, I heard reports of how he reached out to a celebrity relationship guru, Jay Shetty, and like was like, I'm willing to work on this every day. Like, let's get started now. 1 hour a day sessions with you. And so he's putting in work. Like, despite his busy schedule, he was willing to start immediately putting in 1 hour plus sessions. There were photos of him traveling to shamans in India for help. Frankly, I don't know. I'm more skeptical of all these gurus charging all this money. Sure, they have big podcasts. Maybe their teachings are right, but maybe not. Maybe they're just gurus who are good at selling this stuff. Um, I get the most value from like someone like John Gottman, who is scientifically proven to be the best in his field on helping prevent you know choosing the wrong people, but also resolving conflicts and that can lead to divorce. Now, as of the current state, I feel like what's happened with the traumas in Will's memoir, and to sum that all up, I feel like the recommendation I would give Will is essentially, um, understand that you can love someone unconditionally. I noticed that, um, And let me back up there. So there's with all this trauma controversy, we got some like very recent news on how Will's responding to all of this in a little bit of a speech he gave in Baltimore, Jada's home city, a city dear to me as well. And he spoke up and he basically spoke to the crowd. People were curious about how he's reacting to all this, and he's holding through this stronger together image. He's still kind of holding Jada in his arms, saying, admitting that it is a sloppy, you know, uh, social experiment that his marriage has become. But he's holding through to loving his wife unconditionally, and holding strong. And you know, a lot of people are calling, or at least a year ago were calling Will a wimp, a loser, spineless, for not ending the marriage after being constantly disrespected by Jada. Chris Tucker, or not Chris Tucker, Chris Rock, who was the person who got slapped, made jokes about it, and saying how hurt him much worse than uh, Will hurt Chris. And I think there's certain truth to that. Um, you know, I we can only speculate, but I really feel like um, one thing worth highlighting is in his memoir, Will got divorced the first time. He was not the one who initiated it, but just sometimes you get divorced. You fight too much with the person. And as soon as he walked out of the courthouse, he told himself he would never get divorced again. So he's just very strong in his mind about how the world works in a certain way. And his willpower, his control. He wants things to happen in life to happen so much in a certain way. And sometimes you just have to realize that life is not going to be perfect. It's not always going to be a perfect family with parents who are married and happy all the time. And that's okay. And people are sometimes better off independent, separated, but happier and freer, where they can find more people that can fulfill them more. And it sucks. I know it sucks. And it sucks that 50% of marriages supposedly end in divorce. I'm skeptical about that statistic that's everyone's quoting as a fact. I fact checked it. I think it's actually less than that, but still very high. But that also points to the truth that, hey, this happens fairly often. Many people get divorced and it sucks, but it's okay. I know Will's holding on to this. I don't know, but I speculate that he's holding on to this image of, I'm going to love, just, make this marriage work. But sometimes you have to let it go. So in that Baltimore speech, he just talked a lot about unconditional love and how no matter what someone does to him, to you, you have to love them unconditionally. And it seems like that's what he's doing with Jada. And the thing is, some of us as an audience, as fans of his, are crying on the inside seeing this, because they are urging him. They know that that's not a healthy behavior. You can love someone unconditionally, but you also need to set boundaries. You need to not reward disrespect constantly with respect, because that's when you start disrespecting yourself. You need to love yourself enough to say, you are constantly disrespecting me, and I have to cut ties, and I have to end this marriage. And I know it was tough. He got divorced the first time. He never wanted that to happen. He always pictured this perfect marriage. It didn't happen, and he told himself he would never be divorced again. And you know, you got to let go of that. It's okay to be divorced again. It's not the end of the world. In fact, you'll be happier for it. So it's easier said than done, especially when you have a lot of paradigms, including others I still haven't mentioned in the book. So there was one period after he was a wreck, when he was cheated on and broke up with his girlfriend. And you ask if anyone's seen Hitch, some of that made its way onto the writing of the actual story of Hitch. This guy, this king of dating, as a dating coach in that movie Hitch was, a wreck inside because, he was cheated on himself, and, he didn't know if he himself could ever find happiness in a relationship again. And in real life, what happened was, Will did try to go through this period of, sleeping around after being cheated on, but he was never really fulfilled from it. And there's excerpts of this online to verify my claims, but he essentially uh, developed a gag, a vomit psychosomatic response to orgasming, when sleeping with different women. He had his celebrity status at that point as a rapper, still making his name as an actor at that point, but he was doing pretty well with women, and it was just so contrary to his identity, his goals, his dreams of having a happy wife, a happy marriage, that he would literally almost vomit upon orgasm while sleeping around. And you know how things are after something terrible happens, and you sometimes people would just sometimes just go the other way and go crazy. And while he was young, he went the other way, and he thought sleeping around would solve the problem, because the saying, and I think he quotes the saying in the book. He says, the best way to get over someone is to get under someone else. And unfortunately for Will and his wholesome being, it just did not work. And eventually he did find his first wife, and a long-term relationship. And unfortunately it didn't work out. And so sometimes you try your best to choose the right partner, but cracks form over time. So at this point, this video is already over 22 minutes, and I, I think anyone who's still, taking the patience and time to listen to all of this, because according to analytics, most people will click off within the first minute. And once again, I think that also points back to the quickness to judge a book by its cover that I mentioned early on in this video. So unfortunately, a lot of people will not get all the context behind Will's decision, and I'm not as engaging a storyteller as some other YouTubers out there, like Penguin Zero, who is so awesome. I really think he's doing a lot of good work in explaining the issue in a healthy way, explaining these news events and urging people to do healthy activities. And he also is a good person in the sense that he will uh, put people down who deserve to be put down. Very funny channel who covers a lot of uh, modern current topics, and yeah, he just like takes the piss out of people who deserve it, and then very mentally healthy person. Not much drama on YouTube, which I very much respect him. So to kind of conclude in a nutshell, Will, if you ever watch this, I doubt it, but you know I think life sucks, but you got to let go of the things you can't control. And sometimes things happen. People are not how you want them to be. And if you find that's the case, it's okay to separate. Um, we none of us will know all the details, and therefore I'm not one to judge or get too much in your business. But just based off the amount I've already aware of, I think I have a decent amount of context, and I think it's important to hold your ground. It's important to uh, defend yourself, protect yourself, and be courageous to yourself as well. And you can do that by setting boundaries. And sometimes that means separating. Sometimes that means doing your own thing and staying together despite the masses of the crowd. I don't know the full spectrum of the situation, but it very much seems that um, you're at a point with Jada where um, at best you can continue as best friends, but it's not going to be um, a full blown marriage, a romantic relationship anymore. and that's okay. Um, Even in your mind you have this picture of a white picket fence, perfect marriage, no divorce. It happens. It's okay. It's not the end of the world, and perhaps through what you've learned, you could find someone out of the billions of people on this earth, especially with your status and wealth. You have more options than most of us. Um, that fills the gaps that Jada didn't, who maybe less nasty, less nagging, less manipulative, whatever it is that is causing the issues. And so don't repeat your mistakes by choosing someone just like Jada in the future. Try and learn from them, if you're willing to separate. Of course, also, I know you're scared. Potential. I don't know. No, I don't know, but I speculate that children have a part to play as well. People, parents are scared of divorcing because they don't want to ruin the family. But your children are adults now. They can handle it. Hear what they have to say. I mean, uh, they may even want the best thing for you, and they would rather you be separate and happy than together and still miserable. So, work through it. You know more than others, but, consult with these experts. Hear from people who aren't yes men. And I wish you the best of luck. I just feel a little bit more empathy because I have that context and relatability about your childhood, the things you went through, and kind of what you want. And people don't realize that not all rich, famous actors are f boys and just want to sleep around. I could clearly tell through your book that that's for whatever reason, maybe whatever imprinted on you in childhood, you were not that way. You wanted a relationship, and best of luck. Best of luck. I mean, I think at the end of the day, we'll get through this together.